Patrick.
Hey Liz, how are you?
All right, how are you doing?
I'm good. Do I sound clear?
You do.
Perfect.
And you look clear as well.
You beat the traffic.
Yes, I was lucky. I got a space right in front of my building, which is like unheard of in Manhattan.
Yeah, that's crazy. I always there was when I was out there, we would always leave like on Thursdays to fly home. And man, curse if it was sort of the time that the cabs would turn over and they would stop driving. Like you would sit on that corner back when you used to have to hail cabs. We didn't have the web apps and stuff. You'd stand on that corner for an hour and a half.
It's fun.
Sometimes like it was just nuts.
Yeah.
But then I always thought like some people drive, like some people like
Yeah.
actually drive cars here. And then one time I got stuck. We would fly in and out of Newark and LaGuardia depending on, prices. And I thought I was flying out of Newark and I was flying out of LaGuardia. Like, so I got to Newark and realized I was in the wrong place.
Oh no.
And like Newark to LaGuardia is like straight across Manhattan. So next thing you know, I'm in my rental car driving through Chinatown.
Oh my
So,
God. Did you make it?
oh yeah, I made it. I made it. I think I was late. I think I missed the flight, but I survived the trip, I guess.
Oh, that does not sound like a fun adventure. Not at all.
Not for us Midwesterners. All you New Yorkers.
Yeah, we're used to it.
Yep. So I did get the updated email from Sarah. Some of those we'll have to take a look at it. Maybe I don't know. We'll have to figure out what we do with some of them because some of those questions. Yeah, some of those. I mean, they don't totally apply. Obviously, here, I will be touching on some of it. It might be something that for those that have kind of those legitimate questions. I mean, some of them are obviously a little bit rhetorical. We can maybe I'll try to do something just by writing a follow up.
That's fine.
Maybe we'll try to do something like that.
I mean, since we asked them, I sort of feel like we should try and get back to them in some way, but
yeah.
You know what I'm thinking of doing today, Patrick, is I'm going to have my Epic open while you're doing this. Because I have to say that after the last session, I then listened to the program and I still had some trouble doing some of the things. So I'm thinking maybe if I have it open while you're talking, that will make it easier. I know
potentially
that it doesn't always work because we don't have the same screen or whatever that you have.
It'll be pretty close with orders. That's the good thing.
Okay.
There'll be a couple things when I'll talk a little bit about sort of problem list diagnoses, and those may look a little bit different in the navigator, but hopefully the orders stuff is fairly congruent. And then what I do is, because kind of based on some of the other feedback, I'll try to pace myself a slightly differently. I'm going to just dial it back a touch, and when I say dial it back, I'm still going to do things at the same pace, but I'm going to repeat some of the topics in slightly different ways to highlight the point. So I think that will help a little bit. But I think it's been going well. So I'll mostly.
No, we got a lot of very positive feedback from the last one. So that's great. And I apologize that we had to cancel the January one, but things just got a little crazy here.
Yeah.
Quieting down.
I was just talking to a CMIO down in North Carolina, and he kind of seemed to think that kind of a couple weeks here, we'd have a decent view of maybe what our near future will look like. So he kind of thinks we're going to be a little bit out of the Omicron woods here.
Yeah, well, if the numbers is it bad where you are? I haven't really been following.
It's not too bad. The schools here really picked up quite a bit in January. My wife's a teacher, so that kind of created a little bit of havoc, but it's slowly been decreasing. There was a little blip last week in the district, but we kind of ride that fine line between heavily vaccinated and not heavily vaccinated, where we're kind of we're a purple area in Wisconsin. We're kind of a very liberal area surrounded by a lot of conservative areas. So it's sort of an interesting mix that you get here.
It's challenging wherever you are for different reasons, I guess.
That's true. Yeah, you guys. I mean, man, the population centers like New York. I mean, I can't even imagine what the early days of the pandemic were like. Like, it just had to be this weird mix of eerie and terrifying.
Yeah, it's hard to put into words, especially the first few days. It was like, This is like, you feel like you're living in a horror movie.
Yeah, like, because we didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I'm not glad I lived through it, but I think in some ways I'm like we have to take something from it, and I feel like I will be better for it.
Well, you
else.
appreciate what you have more, I guess, when you have it again.
That's true. That's true. I got to know my family really well. I didn't travel obviously for a couple of years. And
yeah.
So I mean that was a unique experience. I think I'm gonna mask more. I think just real like I enjoyed not having the flu last year.
I know. I haven't had a cold in 2 years. I haven't had anything. But they're getting rid of the mask mandate in New York this week, which is not a good idea, I don't think. But
yeah, that'll be interesting. I think there's it'll be interesting. I think if it wouldn't have gotten so politicized, I think even getting rid of it, we still would have had a high number of people that would have done it just because it's safe. But it got into such a weird political world that I'm just sort of afraid that people are gonna there's going to be virtual signaling on both sides rather than people just using common sense.
It could be. Well, we'll have to.
I won't wear it all the time, but like when I'm on an airplane now, I'm gonna wear it. I'm gonna wear it.
Have you been? Yeah, have you been on? You've been on some trips, haven't you?
I have. Yeah, we started to travel a little bit. I'm gonna head down to a customer in Tennessee next week. So I have been. I went up to a soccer game the other week, just a quick jaunt up. So I have been, and they're handing out the little rags to wipe your space and stuff. So it's a lot the same. Just keep my mask on. I don't eat, don't drink. I just kind of mind my business and cross my arms and get off when they tell me. yeah. I haven't been on one where there's been misbehavior, which is I think it's that's to me is always the most unfortunate. These poor people, they don't make the rules. They're just trying to get their job done. Give them a break.
Yeah, really.
So I don't know. I am worried about other things, and we're starting to see cancer screenings and stuff pick back up, which is good because there's been such a backfill of those that haven't happened. So we have a lot of work to do, I think, but hopefully we'll get a little bit better every day.
I hope so.
So I see some folks starting to join.
I see Shireen is there. Hi, Shireen.
Hi, how are you?
This is Patrick Sweeney from Epic, Shireen. This is Shireen Mahmood, who's one of our wonderful rheumatologists.
Oh, great.
Hi,
Shireen.
He's a star.
I think I attended the last meeting and it was so good. I just put it on my calendar with multiple alerts so that I wouldn't have missed this one.
That's good. It's always nice to see repeat folks, and we'll touch on some different stuff this time and focus a little bit on ordering. So hopefully that'll hit the mark. You guys place plenty of orders, so that should be good.
This is true.
So Patrick, I'm going to give you a very brief introduction this time. I will introduce you, but I think a lot of the people who will be on this call were also on the last one. So I'd rather that you have the time to
get to the meat. Yep. Yeah. Nobody came here to hear me joke around. So
well, jokes are good. You can always use jokes. So I think we should probably wait till probably a couple minutes past the hour because people are finishing up their clinics. Yeah.
See, there's Vafa. Hey, Vafa.
Hi.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Hi, Liz.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thanks. And I see Dr. Mancione has joined from GI. Welcome.
Thank you.
There's Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, everything. I see that the recording is already underway. Thank you.
Yeah, it starts when I log in.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that's why I like to wait till so that way. Oh, can you see me? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's good.
Awesome. I'm gonna put myself on mute and then let me know when you want me to drop off, and then everything's all set to go.
Yeah, I mean you can whenever you want is fine.
Oh, all right.
I think
all right. Give me a couple of minutes. I'm just gonna put you on mute and shut my computer off.
Okay. we have about 60 people or so who signed up for this, but there's always the thing that a lot of people sign up and then don't necessarily show. So it's hard to predict how many will actually be joining us, but we'll give a couple more minutes.
Yeah, we're still doing those efficiency hours that kind of kick this off, and I think we hover right around 60% attendance rate, which isn't too bad. Yeah. So, but yeah, you kind of figure 50-50.
Right. Is that the Epic building behind you?
That is Voyager. Yeah, I'm gonna switch myself over to my favorite tips. There we go. But yeah, that was Voyager in the background. A much warmer day than today.
Yeah.
So, although no snow this year.
You haven't had snow?
Not enough.
What are you, a skier or something?
We do ski a little bit, but it's if I'm going to be miserable in the winter, I at least want something glorious to look at, and big piles of snow is always a little fun.
Right.
Yes, I agree.
This is why we're here. If it's going to be 10 degrees.
Show something for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eric, we're just waiting. Going to give it a couple of more minutes because we have quite a few people who signed up. They're probably just making their way to their computers.
I'm going to hop off if that's okay.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sarah.
All right,
Thanks,
no
Sarah.
problem. Have a good night. I'll see you guys
You
soon. Oh, Dr. Kitsis, I'm going to make you the host first. I have to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Make host. Perfect. All right. Enjoy your night. Talk to you soon. Bye.
I think maybe we should go ahead and get started. We have representation from a variety of divisions, which is good. And I suspect more people will be signing on as the hour progresses. So welcome to the second of our 4 EPIC training sessions sponsored by the Department of Medicine Wellbeing Team and the Clinical Advisory Council. For those of you who didn't attend the first session, just to let you know, we're running this program because EPIC has been identified as one of the key drivers of burnout in our Department of Medicine through our wellness survey. And that's not unique to our Department of Medicine. It's commonly cited as a contributor to burnout in medical centers in general. The question has been what to do about it. We're doing several things, but among them is this program. And we've been fortunate enough to partner with EPIC itself to help us with the challenge. And in particular, we've been working with Patrick Sweeney, who is here today. Patrick is a senior member at EPIC, having joined in 2003. He's currently part of the EPIC Physician Wellbeing Team. And he's leading all 4 sessions for us, for which we're very grateful. Today's session focuses on on placing orders and using preference lists. We have 2 remaining, one on March 14th, which will be in-basket management, and one on April 5th, which will be chart review. All sessions are 5 to 6:30 on Zoom. And the sessions are being recorded, and the first one is already available on the Department of Medicine website, and the others will be as they complete. So again, thank you, Patrick, for doing this with us and for us. And the floor is yours. The screen is yours, I should say.
Great, thank you. Well, floor can be mine too. It's just me here, so I'll take both. Hey, everybody. Good to be here. Thanks for the introduction. As she mentioned, I am Patrick Sweeney. I am here from Epic. I'm working at Epic in Verona, Wisconsin. My background is on the implementation team, but as Liz mentioned, I now spend my time on the physician wellbeing team. Can everybody see Hyperspace?
Yes.
Perfect. So the goal today, we're going to do a few things. We're going to really focus on ordering and order related tools in Epic. This is a really good topic, I think, because we place a lot of orders. It's kind of what we do in medicine and in most specialties. And because of that, any few clicks we can save, or any time we can save, or any convenience we can achieve really pays itself off because it's a repetitive thing. So we're going to talk about what some of those things that we can do are to make things a little bit better. I'm training out of a version, our power user environment here at Epic. What that means is it's a training environment. It's all fake stuff. And it also means it might look slightly different than your screen. That's okay. The good thing about this section and talking about orders, many of the things are pretty universal and will look pretty similar. So the orientation of the screen, where some of the buttons are, might look slightly different. I'll try to keep my eye on chat if anybody has a quick question that pops up or something that I might need to clarify. But for the most part, hopefully it will look pretty similar. I'm going to go through this for probably an hour or so, and then what we can do is we can take a pause and check on questions and things we might want to repeat. And if there aren't a lot of questions and people still want me to talk, I will keep showing things. There have been some questions that have been submitted, so some of what you're going to see here is based on some of those questions that were sent over to Sarah and Liz. In other cases, it's kind of our standard stuff too. There were some additional questions that we won't go into in this session. Some of them we're going to cover in subsequent sessions. Depending on what we don't get to, I can also probably fill some out and maybe answer some via writing. So we'll make sure to get to everybody though. Okay. So here I am. I'm logged in. I am here taking a look at Ramsey's chart. Ramsey's here for an ambulatory office visit today. So this probably looks somewhat similar to what your screen looks like. Kind of, the tri-pane navigator view here. You can see my left pane has my meds and orders section, problem list and visit diagnoses, and then my notes. I'm on my plan tab. It may look a little bit different, but for the most part, this is how yours looks. Now, orders is always available to us in the lower left on the toolbar here, and that's our order section. If you are a keyboard shortcutist, Control O jumps you to that as well. It brings your focus right down to orders. So if you're already typing something and you want to go and quick place an order, you do Control O and then you can place an order. The first thing to know when placing orders in Epic is that the search tries to be smart. And I say tries to because there are, some things that can still happen depending on what people call things and things like that. But for the most part, it tries to find what you're looking for based on little portions of the word that you type. So if I wanted to do a chest x-ray, I can try to type chest x-ray. I don't know if it's a hyphen or if it's a space or not. I'm gonna hit enter and hope I find it. And I get it. I get a few here. So I got it right. Maybe there was some good synonyms in my system. So that's not too bad. But a lot of times you might try to type something and it's kind of frustrating, or you get a lot of different options. So one of the things that I think is really valuable, and this isn't anything you have to build, is just learning how to type or learning how to search a little smarter. So if I wanted a 2-view chest x-ray and I just type in CHX2 and I hit enter, what that's going to do is it's going to go and find the CH, the X, and the 2 somewhere in the database of orders and pull up the search options. So I'm typing a lot less characters and often finding a little bit more of a specific example. And here's that 2-view chest x-ray that I was looking for. So that's one of the things that you can do is type a little bit less. It not only works for procedures, imaging, labs, but it also works for medications. And I'm going to type in ibuprofen, and then I'm going to do something really quick. So when I type in ibuprofen, I get medications. I get my clinic administered medications. Not a horrible list here, but depending on how your preference list is built, you may be drinking from a much larger fire hose in the database. You know, a lot of different medication options that are ibuprofen, for example, and you kind of might be searching for the specific one you want, and that can be a little bit painful. So the trick that I use for medications is I often just use a few letters of the medication and then the strength that I'm looking for. In this case, 800 milligram ibuprofen. So once I find that 800 milligram ibuprofen, it's a little bit easier. So rather than typing out ibuprofen, which I do know how to spell, but sometimes you fat finger it a little bit, I could just type in IBU, put in the strength of 800, and I can find that medication that I might be looking for. This also works well for things like suspensions. So if you wanted to do a suspension, just typing in that SUSP brings up whatever those Augmentin suspensions are. So probably not going to give Mr. Ramsey here a suspension, but for pediatric doses, especially when you're trying to find those suspensions, this can be a nice way to try to narrow down what you're looking for to just showing those suspension medications. So a quick way to find that. So once again, it's just searching for a little bit less. It searches for pieces of words. It's a pieced out word search. So if it's a multiple word order, or if it's got multiple parts to it, you'll just need to put in a few letters of each part, and it'll go out to the database and try to find those. The cool thing is this works both for orders and the problem list and visit diagnoses. All right. Well, that's one way that we can do it. So now we're going to place just a couple orders here. I'm going to actually we'll do that chest X-ray. We'll do that chest X-ray again. So I'm going to go ahead and look for that chest X-ray 2 views that I found before. And when I hit enter and open it up, I get the pop-up that everybody loves, where you have all these options and you think, thanks, Epic, for all of these options. I really appreciate the opportunity to fine-tune that order to exactly what I want. You might not say that, but we'll pretend you do for just a second. When this comes up, yours might look a little bit like this. You might have a few more options. You might have some other questions. But what I want to teach you is how to do it so that I don't have to answer the things that I always answer the same each time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to see this is future. That's fine. I expect it today. That's okay. It's expiring in a year. That's fine. Routine status. Okay. Now this is just urgent. We'll just call this one urgent. That's one of my questions. And then my reason for exam is going to be pneumonia. Something like that, pneumonia suspected or whatever you might do. This works for any type of order you might place, and I'll talk about that here in a second. So when I do that, like I would normally do it, I'm going to go ahead and click accept. I'm not going to click accept though. The next thing I'm going to teach you is anytime you're in here, you're kind of in one of these big long things trying to figure out where is that accept button, and you're going to scroll down. If you just right click anywhere in that box, it will automatically accept that window for you. So I'm just going to repeat that again. Anytime you're in this editing an order, right click anywhere and it automatically accepts that box. So you have to try to scroll and find that accept button. It's a little bit easier. So that was great. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to fill that out each time. I order this test a lot. I think those questions are silly, you know, whatever the reason might be. There's a little star here. There's a little star that you can see when I hover over that order. And when I hover over that star, it says add to preference list. When I click on that, it allows me to add this to the preference list. So now what it's doing is it's bringing up that very similar order composer, and it's giving me some options to add it to my preference list or my favorites. So this is where I can tailor a specific thing, a specific order, and how I want to order it and make it my own.
There's a work. Don't know why I'm attending this thing. It's part of wellness.
Please mute people.
Yeah. So what's going on with you?
Liz, you should be able to mute them.
Tanya, you're on not on mute.
All right. So once I have this in here.
Me too.
Hey, Tanya, I think you might need to mute.
Mm-hmm.
So once I have this in here, there's a couple things that are important about adding things to my favorites. The first thing I'm going to talk about is this display name up here at the top. And the display name is important because I want to differentiate this order from what I might have just placed. So this is going to be my pneumonia. And I'm also going to say go Bengals, just to illustrate the point here. This display name is just my display name. This doesn't go out on the requisition. This doesn't, get printed. This doesn't go across the interface. It's really just used as sort of a way that I know what order this is that I'm going to place. So that's one important thing. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the items within the orders. You can see here that it says questions that you might have modified, maybe patient specific, and are not automatically copied over. At first, do no harm. So it wants to be careful, and it doesn't copy those questions that we answered all the way over, but we can see them right here. We can see here, copy from order. What this does is it takes those questions that we might have answered. Is the patient pregnant? Why are you ordering this exam, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it allows you to copy over those answers from what we just did. And I'm just going to do copy those over. Those aren't specific ones. I want those actually for this. Everything else looks good. So I'm going to click accept. So I'm just click yes there. So now I'm going to get rid of that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same CHX2. And you're going to see here that there is a chest x-ray 2 views pneumonia go Bengals. In fact, I could have even just typed in CHX pneumonia. Oops, if I could PNE. And it's going to actually use that same searching logic that we talked about to find those pieces of the word. So I can actually have that pneumonia one very easy. Now, when I click on it, watch what happens. It doesn't pop up. It doesn't pop up because the answers to those questions, why are you ordering this, reason for exam, is already there. It's like that screening mammogram, darn screening mammogram. Why are you ordering a screening mammogram? Well, let's see. Just thought I would order for no particular reason other than maybe a screening mammogram. So it allows you to do that, to add that reason for exam or other question or the formulation of the medication that you like to do, the specific taper that you built out, the instructions that you have. You can build that out, and you can order multiple, and you can create multiple versions of this. So rather than do pneumonia suspected here, I can say recurrent chest pain or chest pain. Recurrent chest pain. I'm going to say accept there. And now I'm going to go over here, and that star here is yellow. But if I click on it again, it gives me the option to create a new preference list entry, edit the existing one, or remove it. I'm going to create a new preference list entry. I'm going to call this one X-ray chest 2 views, go Cubs, chest pain. All right. Do the same thing there. And then I'm going to scroll down because I took this Patrick's class, and I'm going to copy that from order, that reason for exam of recurrent chest pain. I'm going to click accept. And now when I click on, or now when I go to those CHX2 and I have go in both of them, I have my 2 here. So those 2 different versions, depending on why I might be ordering this chest x-ray, either the chest pain or a pneumonia rule out, I have both of those now listed, and I can choose the one that makes the most sense and be able to have that without having that thing pop up. So when you find those orders that are hard to find, that's a really great way to do it. So one question here, when I do that to order the preference list, it asks apply to current selections. Accepting that blanks out the information entered into the preference list entry. Now, if you're doing that, one of the things that might be happening is you're not copying over the answers to the questions, or it's possible that what you have in there may not be something that adds to the preferences. We'd have to double check what it is, but you have to make sure to copy those questions over. That's a really important step. All right. So doing that can allow you to not only add some of those, I call it revenge of the ancillary, when the ancillary has decided that we have to answer all these questions, but it also is good for different formulations of medications, as I mentioned. And it's also good when you find that thing that you couldn't find before. So there was somebody talking about finding ultrasounds previously. Depending on what the ultrasound name is, it might have a funny name. You might finally get a hold of the answer and they say, oh, just order this other thing. And once you do that, being able to save that as a favorite with your name, how you would like to call it, allows you to not have to search for that thing in such a way again. Okay, so now what we're going to do is do a little bit of a different version of that. We're going to stay with preference lists here. So if you're catching up on how to do preference lists, we're going to still catch you here. So I'm going to enter a few orders here. I'm going to do a CBC, a lipid panel, a CMP. That looks good for now. So I'm going to see all of my orders here. And I like to place all my orders future. And for whatever reason, this one isn't future. Maybe I saved it wrong on my preference list before. So the first thing I'm going to do when I have 3 orders here is there's a little button on the top. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to show you one more thing here. Whenever you're in this window, this little pop-up, I like it because it kind of keeps it hidden away at the bottom. But if you're somebody that likes to have your orders with a little more space, or you place a lot more orders, or maybe you work in the hospital as well, there's a little button here on the far right side of this little window. Looks like 2 little rectangles. And when I click on that.
Yeah, hi, this is Dr. Herbsman. There's a patient of mine, Cyril Perkins. So I need to speak to the.
Hey, Dr. Herbsman, if you can just mute.
I figured out how to mute people now.
Ah, perfect. Okay.
That's a superpower, Liz.
It is very powerful. So when I click on that little box, it actually moves the orders to this sort of order shopping cart here. It gives them a little more space. It really is the same functionality. Everything else works the same. The disadvantage here is it's kind of behind that notes if you have your notes in your right-hand tab. But some people do like to have it here when they're kind of managing a patient, maybe with multiple different orders, or they're maybe doing a couple different medications that are carry-ons or things like that. But I'm going to move it back to the floating window down here by clicking on that little button. But that's just a little toggle here. And then you can see the little floating window here to bring it back, which is nice. Okay, so I'm going to go edit multiple. So now when I have multiple orders in here, edit multiple allows me to change all of them together. And when I pull them up here, I want to select all those orders and I want to make sure that they're all future. And I want them expected in 8 months, M plus 8. Now we remember M is month, M plus 8 will make the date 8 months from now. Similarly, T is today. So if I wanted something 7 days from now, it'd be T plus 7, Y is year, W is week, etc. It allows you to do that without trying to figure out what the date is. I expect this in about 8 months. I wanted to expire in 12 months. So these are just, I want Ramsey to get these before I see him on his next regular physical. Everything else looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and click accept. And just as a refresher, that was on edit multiple. And then you select all those orders, and then anything you apply here will apply to all of the orders that you selected. So I can change them all and have uniformly with the same expected and expiration dates. So that looks pretty good. I'm pretty good at finding things. I do this a lot because it's literally my job to help find things easier. But one of the things that happens is I order these together quite a bit. This kind of set of things are pretty common for me, for my patients, for physicals and things like that. So one of the things that I can do is there's an options button. The options button, when I click on it, it has some options here. This is where you can do things like change providers. You can add people to CC results and things like that. But what I really like and what I'm really here for is this create panel button. It's a super powerful and cool button, and I love it. So I'm going to go ahead and click create panel. And then I'm going to get a similar window to what we saw before with add to preference list, or when we edit things. It's going to pull in those procedures, and it's going to pull in those same defaults that I have in my shopping cart here that's active. And it's going to be a add to preference list button, or an add to preference list view. The one thing that's different here is the display name. The display name doesn't have anything to start with, so you have to fill this in. It's a good reminder. I like to change it anyway. I'm going to call this my male physical and go Cubs, just to illustrate kind of how that works and how we can find things with the keywords again. I'm going to keep these the same for now. This is where you could adjust the section or the preference list if you do that and you manage it, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And I'm going to just say this all looks good, and I'm going to click accept. I'm just going to say yes, append to the current order. It's going to bring all those in, and I'm going to get rid of it just because I'm going to now show you what we can do. All right. So now I'm going to go to add order just like we did before. I'm going to say mail physical, and it's going to pop right in. So it finds it just like an order. If I would just do here, I'll just show it so we can, let's find something where we won't be able to find it. We'll do Go Cubs. So I got two things there. When you type it in, or if it has a similar name, it shows up in your procedures just like any other order. The nice thing here is that it gives me a different type. This is a procedure panel. And when I double click on it, it brings it into the section with all those defaults as I had it. And you can see here, it brings it all in as one big block. But let's just say, for instance, I recently just had gotten a lipid panel from Ramsey. I can hover over it and X out of that specific one. So these are really powerful because even if I don't always order maybe 5 tests, I can put 5 tests in the panel and I can remove that single test, the 20% of the time that I don't order that for my patients. So you can do a lot here with panels. One thing that's important is right now, although this is changing very shortly, when you need to edit a panel, that's a little bit more difficult to do, i.e. you can't do it. So what you want to do with panels, if you do need to add something to a panel or you want to remove something, you really do need to go and create that new panel. So if you ever want to remove something from your preferences that you accidentally saved, you can also do that right from here as well. That same yellow star now, when I click on it, we do have that remove preference list entry, which would get rid of that panel. But I'm not going to do that because I like this panel and everything looks pretty good. The really neat thing, I've seen people do a lot of different things with panels. One of the things that we can do, I'll show you kind of another way to do this that might get your ideas going. So we're going to get rid of that first panel. And if I want to create a panel here, one of the things you can do with a panel, oops, I used my right button. Options, create panel. You can see here that by default, these are all pre-selected. I'm going to unselect all of them. I'm going to call this my pick a test, Go Cubs. Everything looks good there. Yes. So now you're going to see this. I type in Go Cubs and I choose that pick a test. It now brings up this option where I can choose from it. So I've seen some people do some pretty interesting things here. I was with a provider who was doing a lot of pain management, for example, and they had built sort of a pick a set of tests, therapies, and different treatments that they would do. Rather than try to remember what they all were, they could just type in pain. They get the little pop up and they could choose the ones that they wanted. So it's almost a way you can kind of build yourself a little mini smart set where you can choose from certain things. Works both ways. I could choose all of them in this case as well, just like we did before. I would never want to do that with something where I would choose all of them because I just increase the number of clicks, but it allows you to sort of decide which ones you want to do. There might be some times where you do one or another test and you could select it that way. So it really works both ways. You can either have them pre-selected and then remove them, or you can have none of them selected and then choose the one or the ones that you might want to order for that specific session. So pretty cool way to be able to use panels. Okay, I'm going to just take a quick look at chat and see what kind of questions we have and what I might need to touch on again. Okay.
Would you be able to show us how to clean up a long list of panels that have accrued, unfortunately, over the half decade?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So we're gonna do a little bit of the preference list management toward the end, where we can talk about how to clean some of that stuff up. The easiest way to do it while you're doing things, you don't want to do it every time, but if you just see something when you order it and you're like, oh, that's not the one that I wanted. Once it's in your panel view, you can uncheck that star and say remove preference list entry and it'll get rid of it. But we'll show you the way that you can do it en masse here toward the end. Okay. So I want to talk about something related to ordering that I think is really pretty helpful and kind of underutilized. And I'm going to talk about the visit diagnoses section. And I think yours looks like this. I hope it does. Or maybe it doesn't look like this. It might look a little bit like this. But the visit diagnoses section is where we pull in those diagnoses for the visit that we're treating the patient with. And there are some really nice buttons here that I really like that I don't think everybody always thinks about. So you can see here in the visit diagnoses section, I have 3 buttons. I have problems, previous, and common. Problems is the patient's problem list. Previous are previous diagnoses that I've used for the patient. And common is my common list of orders of diagnoses that I can build. Now, you might have a common list now and you say, I've never built anything. It was probably built for you at some point and it may or may not have anything that's relevant anymore. Who knows? But one of the things I can do when I'm in here for this common list, I'll use this as the example. There's an option here when I click on it to expand menu to buttons. I'm going to click on that. And that builds in these buttons here. So it saves me a click when I'm choosing from it. And I'm going to expand all to buttons too. It tries to limit it at first, but give them all to me. I'm okay with it. So here are all those common diagnoses buttons that we have here. You're going to see I have like a well child check and anxiety and different things like that, back pain, fatigue, otitis media, all these different things here. And my buttons look pretty good. But sometimes with diagnoses, the way that they work is the actual important word is at the end. That adjective that actually makes the whole diagnosis worth it is buried behind a whole bunch of words that somebody thought sounded really important that we use for too many various things in the United States. So what we have here is a wrench. If you have it in this view, it's a wrench here. If you have it in this view, it's it'll be a little menu option that'll say edit common diagnoses list. When I click on that wrench, it brings up my editing window to edit those common diagnoses. And what I really like about this is it allows me to add or remove or modify or adjust sort of the order of the buttons and kind of where they are located in my view. But it also allows me to change the caption. So here's this encounter for routine child health examination without abnormal findings. This whole without abnormal findings is actually the relevant part here. So I'm just going to call that my WCC, as you see here. The ankle sprain, sprained ankle, whatever we want to do here. That one's probably not that long, so it's not that helpful. But you can kind of see here, there's a lot of different options for what you might want to choose. And by making the captions a little bit shorter, or adding maybe diagnoses that are a little bit harder for me to find, it actually adjusts what they look like in the buttons. And having shorter words, it doesn't seem like it's a big time saver, but having that room to breathe and being able to have your brain actually find what you're looking for, not buried in a sea of words, is actually pretty helpful. So it's a good thing to do if you're going to spend the time building a really good list that has some good common diagnoses that you like. Spend the time actually saving those captions. It'll remember those captions. It'll remember your common list, and it's a pretty nice thing to have. So this visit diagnoses list can be really, really helpful. So now when I add that that normal physical, I can just click the button and it adds it to the diagnoses list rather than needing to do a lot of other things. It works similar if you do it from the problem list. Obviously, one click to add it up there is pretty helpful too. But for a lot of those things that may not be on the problem list, or for those frequent flyer patients that you're maybe seeing for some acute episodes, things like that, being able to leverage that previous set of diagnoses to make sure we get that really nice specific ICD-10 code that we spent time sort of coming up with on the previous visit is a valuable thing to do and can definitely save you time. So that is some of the visit diagnoses and the problem list items. Okay, so now what I want to do is we're going to jump back talking about actual orders. I'm going to talk about how we can edit that list. I'm going to use chart search. Chart search right now is in the upper right corner. Pretty soon it's going to be in a slightly different spot. I can also use it in my storyboard over here, and I'm going to chart search for, use control space bar to open it up, and I'm going to chart search for pref, and I'm going to stop. I'm not going to hit enter. I'm just going to type in pref, and then I'm going to get this jump to. So chart search is great. If you haven't used it, please use it. It's super, super helpful to find things in the chart, especially as you've had patients for many, many years now. But the other thing it can find is not only things within Ramsey's chart, but it can take me to activities in Epic. I don't know which, folder it's under in your build or anything like that, but I know if you type in pref, you're going to get a couple different things. The one that you want is the pref list composer, not to be confused with the preference list editor, different preference list. But the pref list composer is where all of those favorites are stored. It's stored as a preference list. So when I click on that, I'm brought to my preference list selector. And when I just save as favorites, I don't put mine into different types of preferences. I like them all in the orders preference list. And then if I do anything with them, I like to sort of do subsections within my outpatient orders preference list because it makes it a little bit easier for me to move things around. So I have my outpatient orders preference list. So I'm going to choose that. And we can just see here, I've cleaned it up. We can see here those things that I've entered, those favorites that I've placed. So the one person had the question, what if I needed to remove a whole bunch of old favorites that maybe I've accumulated over the years? This is where you can do it. From here, it's pretty easy to kind of click. You can even shift click and get rid of multiple things at a time and remove those items right here. Now, I wouldn't advise, doing a whole bunch at once because you might accidentally remove something you didn't want to, and then you're kind of stuck. You don't get it back. But this is where you can remove those items or even edit some of those defaults, other than, as I mentioned, you can't edit the actual contents yet. But I can do things like, in this case, that procedure panel where I didn't have them default checked. I can add those and I can do that, and I can click accept there. So you can do a few things, but it's limited with panels. But this is where all those are. And the one thing that's really neat here that you can probably see is those panels and those single tests are all together in the same thing. It's all part of a preference list. It's all sort of built the same way. I can move them around, have them in the same sections if I like to divide things up, things like that. The other thing that I did was I didn't change the sections that I was adding it to, even though I had multiple sections here. Some people do, and they're really good about always changing the section and putting it in the sections if they are dividing their preference list out. But other people, like me, just want to kind of save it, put it in the favorites, and then if I'm going to organize it later, I can go back and take care of it. But we can see here that I have my two panels here, my male physical and my PICA test. If I wanted to put those in a panels section, I'm just going to click and hold and drag it over. Just click on it, drag it into my panels section. That's pretty good. I have my chest pain and my pneumonia here. I'm going to drag those over into my imaging section and do that here. Now you might have like a physical section, you might have a diabetes section, whatever your sections are, you can kind of drag around within this. If I drag something into that imaging section and I didn't want to put it in there, I can put it back in my favorites. You can kind of do this all day long. But really what the idea here is that from this view, we can actually edit our preference list, which I do like. Now you can also add things to preference list here. There's this new item here. When I click on new item, it allows me to select an orderable and add it to my preference list. So you can build a preference list here. But what I would say is I like to build it while I'm doing it, or at least while I'm thinking about it, or kind of more in the moment from the actual order entry screen, because I think it makes it a little bit easier to make sure that I enter all the right defaults and I answer all the hard stops. It's not always as clear when I do it this way, which hard stops I might find depending on the scenario. So while you could build in mass here, I really like to do it from that patient workspace. Even if I don't place that order, just like we have with Ramsey, I can still add those things to my preference list. And then when I'm done building it, I can just remove those orders without, signing anything or doing anything like that. So while you can add from here, I really like to use this more to organize and to edit. It's a little bit easier to do that here than it is anywhere else. Now, just like we had before, we have our panels, labs, and imaging. I can add a new section, and I'm going to call this diabetes. I can add that. And I can add sections, and you can do different things here. You can add subsections to sections. You can do quite a bit here. Now, why might you use the sections? So where the sections come into play, let's actually go ahead and We'll X out of that so it will save it. So where that comes into play is when we do that add order, this little, I like to, the three lollipops. When I order that preference list choice button, some people rather than typing like to browse. And that brings up this browse section. And they do a really good job of maintaining their own favorites. And that's where the stuff comes up here. So you can see here, when I click on only my favorites, I can see those orders in the different sections that they come in. So if I wanted to browse and if I had a whole bunch of orders, obviously I could use this. I could open that little orders window. I could click on just the imaging and I could see those at the top. Or you can click on panels and I see the panels at the top. So it'll kind of jump you down to that section, whatever one you're trying to look at. You can imagine if I had maybe 50 or 100 orders here. But this is where that browse comes into play and where some people really like to use sectioning. I'm more of a typer, so I'm much more comfortable just sort of making sure that I have a good display name, that I can either shortcut to find what I'm looking for or see it in the list when I choose it after I type a few things. But this is where that sectioning can come into play. Now, this other order that you have here, there's a research panel that I added. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is I couldn't move that research panel when I was in that preference list composer because it's in a different type of preference list. So that's why I like to keep everything under that orders outpatient. Makes it a little bit easier to manipulate. Any questions on that preference list composer? I'm going to jump back there just so we can all see where it was. So I'm going to just type in pref. I'm going to choose the composer. I'm going to look at my orders outpatient. And here is that list that I built before. Does this answer the question of how you can delete some of those accumulated panels over the years?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Good.
Patrick?
Yeah.
Are you going to show how to add a new order to a preference list when you're ordering it, like put it in the organized section?
Yes, I can. I'll do that too. Yep.
Okay.
So good question, good comment. So some people like to do it real time and want to add it when they're doing it. So I'm going to do a lipid panel here. And I can see here's my lipid panel. I'm going to make it future. I'm going to expect it tomorrow, and I'm going to expire it in 2 months. I want them to do this kind of soon. So everything looks pretty good there. I don't know about fasting yet. It's not a hard stop, so I don't worry about it. Everything else looks good. So I'm just going to right click because I took Patrick's class, and that closes that window or it accepts it for me. And now this lipid panel looks good over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same thing to favorite something, which I think is sort of the key here. I'm going to hit that favorite button, which allows me to add it to my preference list or my favorites. And I'm going to get that same window we saw here. I'm going to call this lipid panel. We'll do Go Cubs again, just to differentiate it from those other lipid panels that may be lurking out there. I can take a look at any of the defaults that I might want to make sure get added, the questions, if there were any of the revenge of the ancillaries. And you're going to notice one thing before I jump out, the date convention changed a little bit. So you see it, what it does now is because I'm adding it to a preference list, it doesn't know what today is. It's going to be based on that start date, and it does it just by days. So in this case, we have S+1 would be whatever day I place it, plus 1 day, which would be tomorrow in relative terms. And 2 months from now is the start date plus 59 days. So it's the same thing as that kind of date convention, only it's a little bit different when we're adding things to a preference list. Now what we have here is I'll talk about these other two things. There's the preference list, which is this first one, and then there's the section. So remember I said I like everything to just stay in my orders preference list. That way I can move things around within it. I can have mix and match. I can have sections that have multiple things in it. I don't like to change this. Some people really do, and that's okay. But for me, for managing it, for sliding things around, for building my sections, things like that, you can't mix and match and you can't move between the different lists. I agree we should be able to, we can. So what we have to do is we have to put them all in the one list, but we can still get that same sectioning as I showed before. So we're going to keep it as orders, but you could change it if that's something that you do there. And then the section is where you can do different things. So when I click on section, here are the sections that I already had. We have my favorites, which is the default. We have my diabetes section, imaging, labs, and panels, all those things that I created. Let's just say I hadn't created one. I can create a new section. I can call this my super duper new section. We can add a new display name, click accept, and now we're going to have that section created. So if there's ever a situation where you don't already have a section, you can even create one. So I'm going to put this in my super duper new section. Everything looks pretty good. And I then can go ahead and click accept. Say yes, just to make sure those details get added. And then everything looks pretty good there. So now if I go back to that workbench, I might have to, nope, it's already there. Good. So now that workbench, so just like we added that diabetes section before, on the fly, it added that super duper new section that we just did. And here's that lipid panel. So you can see it kind of does both of those things. It works back and forth. If you prefer and you remember to do it that way when you're adding it, it will allow you to do that from right here. If you don't remember, you can drag and drop it in that other section as well. But this is a really nice thing to do, especially if you like to choose from that shopping cart rather than type and find. But it works both ways. So depending on your preference and how you like to work. That answer it, Bafa?
Yes, thank you. I find it very helpful.
Yes. Yeah, I think especially as you start to build up a really big library of favorites, it can really help you differentiate. Some people really like to do it by like type of visit. I was just actually helping a provider the other day, and they do different sets of follow-ups. So they might do a 3-month follow-up, a 6-month follow-up, or a 9-month follow-up. And so they have a section for each of those in their preference list. And each of them have those future orders with the defaulted or the expected date defaulted differently based on what those are. So, you know, even though it's the same test and really the same underlying items other than the expected date, it allows them to sort of choose the one they really want for that time to really help when the patient shows up at lab, so that staff know which ones are kind of expected based on that rough time frame. So you can really have multiple different entries of essentially the same thing, but have them in different sections so that when you go to your browse window to those 3 lollipops there, you can kind of just jump right to your thing, choose the 2 that you want, and go, which is pretty nice. I have mine defaulted right now to only favorites. Depending on how many favorites you have, this is probably where you want to eventually be. If you're just adding a few favorites because there's a couple things that are hard to find and you're still typing, doesn't matter a whole lot. But otherwise, what you see is you see your entire organizational preference list, which is often pretty big there. You do have that ability when you're in here. If I believe this is in your version as well. Whenever you see a wrench, it allows you to rearrange sections. So if you do have, once you develop a lot of favorites, you can move your sections around right from in here as well. You don't have to go to the preference list composer to move those things around, which is kind of nice. So if you do have, orders, you want to move your orders more to the top, I can bring that up to the top and have it there. So that this will always be at the top for me. All right, so I'm going to jump to a bit of orders management here, but I'll take a pause. We are, as I mentioned, going to have some time at the end for some questions as well. But I'm going to talk about one of the things that came up in questions was, what do we do when we have to cancel an outstanding order or different things like that, which is a bit hard to answer directly because depending on the type of order and how you're set up, some things kind of once they've already gone downstream, once they've already headed down the interface path, and the ancillary has them, they have to kind of be canceled on that other side depending on setup. So there might be some limitations to what you can cancel once things have already started. But one of the places that we can see outstanding orders, and I'm going to go ahead and sign this order here just so I can illustrate it. All right, we're going to add from those common diagnoses that we did. We're going to do this CBC for anxiety today just for fun. Go ahead and sign that. But once we have it, kind of where do those orders live? Where are those open orders? Can I see kind of what's active for a patient? There's an activity called in my system, it's called order review. It should be the same for you as well. So I'm going to just do that same thing I did before. I don't know what menu it's under. I don't know kind of what you might have, but I'm going to just type in order, and I'm going to look at the jump to section. And there is an order review section here. I'm going to click on order review. Now,
Patrick, I don't think we have it.
okay, let's see. Do you have, is yours called open orders?
I'm gonna type order in search. We have orders only, order destination notification, place ambulatory order, and A and C orders.
You do it. Okay. I wonder. So sometimes it would be called open orders. We should double check. And then I won't get into this a lot, but I will talk about what this is for. So what order review does is it shows the open orders, those future and standing orders that exist for a patient. That's what this is designed to do. Looks like some people do have order review. So we should double check. Maybe not everybody does. But what order review is it's designed to house those open orders for the patient. And one of the things that's a bit challenging is depending on what you see is based on what views are built. So there might be certain views that you have as an organization. There might be some views that you would need to have built, but mine by default is set up to show open orders, which is the most common. And open orders would be any orders that are future or standing that haven't been released yet. That's what kind of definition of open orders is. So we can see that future CBC here, and we can see there's a standing hemoglobin that at some point was ordered for this patient. So this shows
Sorry,
all.
I found it. You actually have to be in the patient's chart to get to
Yes.
it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Good clarification. Actually, that's a really important one. You have to be in a patient's chart to get to the order review activity. It's not one that will allow you to sort of select a patient after you choose it. Very good clarification. Thank you. And I know you didn't do it on purpose, but I think it worked out okay. So this will show those future or standing orders here. Now, depending on what your organization has set up, there's different things that you can do to these. The main one is that discontinue button. So if, for instance, we didn't need that CBC anymore, I can click on that CBC, and when I highlight it and I click on discontinue, it'll have me give the reason if that's necessary and allow me to cancel that order from here. There are other views sometimes available, but you can see here that this is, there's a lot of different inpatient versions here as well. But essentially, what you can do is you can show really any orders in it. It doesn't have to just be open orders. It can be, orders that aren't open, orders that have already been released, different things like that. But that's sort of what this view is designed to do. It's mainly there for those future standing orders on the ambulatory side to either release orders. If we want to release it, this is what the lab will sometimes use for releasing orders, or to discontinue some of those orders when you have them. But I like order review for that. It's also sometimes helpful, especially for frequent flyer patients that might have a lot of orders that are kind of outstanding and open, to kind of see what's out there. What I like about this compared to looking at chart review, for instance, is chart review. We kind of have the different tabs for the different orders. We have labs and imaging, because that's kind of how I want to organize things and see things from a deep dive. This one, order review, is going to be agnostic of what type of order it is. If it's a lab or an imaging study, it'll all kind of exist in the same view, which I like. But that's where you can do some of that canceling, and you can see other info on here. You can, if you have it, this is where people like reprint requisitions and things like that too, but it kind of depends. You can see here I have a lot of other options that may or may not be available for you. For example, change the resulting lab, which has become a little bit more popular in recent years when you end up with situations where patients might need to go to Quest or LabCorp rather than that hospital lab, for instance. So you can do that with those orders that haven't yet been sent out, those future standing orders. It just takes some configuration. So that's what I have set up there.
Patrick, I think this also lives in this visit tab.
Oh, okay. So you have it in.
I think it lives in this visit, because you can definitely print labels out of this visit.
Yeah. Yep. Kind of over here on your sidebar.
For me, it comes up as a full,
full window.
Not
Okay.
not a,
Yeah.
but it has the same information.
Good. Okay. So yeah, depending on what all of this is just information in the system. So you might have something that's showing outstanding orders in a different report that certainly might be possible. Okay, so we've gone for about 55 minutes, and it's 5:55 Eastern time after a long day, and I've talked about several things here. What do you want me to cover again? What questions has it brought up, and how can I clarify what some of those things are to make this as easy as possible? And I have a couple more things I'd like to show, but I did say I'd stop at that hour mark to see where we were.
You didn't show us for medications, but I'm assuming you can do the same. It's all the same clicks and setups to do this for medications.
Yeah. Let's think of a good medication example, because I think with medications, a really neat thing you can do is, let's do, I don't want to do.
Patrick, when you were typing, I saw these examples of favorites, for example, ibuprofen 400 twice a day, 800 once a day. That you can customize. Like if it's a medication that you order twice a day, but you also sometimes order it once a day, you can have favorites of it.
Yes, exactly. And that's, I think, where the favorites really come in. That, people hopefully did some work ahead of time to try to say, hey, let's build a few for internal medicine. But what I like about favorites is I don't depend on Epic trying to build the right thing. I don't depend on the organization to save my favorites. I sort of can control my own destiny. And fool me once, man, shame on that Patrick from Epic and not doing a better job. But fool me twice, shame on me for sort of not adding it to my favorites. Because there really is that option to be able to do it. So if the Adderall, I think, is an interesting example here. So I'm going to add this Adderall. And one of the things you're going to see here when I add it, okay, this patient doesn't have a terminal illness, but we'll say yes. So I don't want to do the PDMP right now. So one of the things that I did here is show you how panels can be really kind of nice for some of these medications. So in this case, it's an Adderall 10 mg for 3 months, which, as you probably know, is very difficult to do when you're only supposed to be doing it for 1 month at a time. But what this does is it built a panel where the 3 different medications, you build them together and then you align those start and end dates. So that it actually is 3 prescriptions. So it's 3 30-day prescriptions that you can then have for the patient with a start date. Here you can see it here. It's kind of in the read the fine print, obviously. Do not start before March 11th. So this has that start date that's calculated based on how long I'm going to have this current prescription. And then down here, do not start before April 10th. So it kind of adds on to the next one there too. So it's creating a panel of medications that's literally the same medication, but just with different start dates. So that way, when I print off that, when I print it off, or when I send it, it'll have those right details for the pharmacy. So it's a nice way that that you can do that, which I think is good. So there's a question, and I'll get to the inhaler question too next, but this is how one of the ways you can use that for medications. But yes, to answer your question, if I wanted to add this to my preference list, and here's my panel for that Adderall for 3 months, I want to call this, Go Cubs ADHD, which sometimes the Cubs give me. I can add it to my favorites. I can do the same sort of sectioning. Again, I like to put it in my favorites. So even though it's not even though there's a section here called medications, I like to keep it in orders because I can then intermix a medication order with a lab order or a level that I might do. I can kind of have it all together, and that's how I like to organize things. But again, you don't have to do it that way. When I click accept there, this adds that. We can just say, yes, that's fine. Everything looks good. So now, just like we did before, Go Cubs, we can see here are those procedures, and now we have that medication. And when we double click on it, it has that panel. So panels can be medications, they can be regular orders, favorites can be medications, they can be labs, they can be whatever, it kind of all puts it together. But I think it's really valuable, and I didn't do it because I don't have a great example of a unfilled out one in our training environment. But when you do some of those complex tapers, and you kind of finally get everything to fit, or you kind of finally get it how you want it, those are painful things to do. And even if you do maybe 5 or 10 different tapers, it's nice to have that saved, because 2 weeks from now, when you do it again, you just probably saved yourself a minute and a half. And you do that 4 or 5 times a day, now all of a sudden, the time we're saving starts to really add up. So this is it. Does this kind of answer your question on medications?
Yeah, it seems like you could probably do a same medication, different dosing that you're supposed to increase at 4-week intervals this way. And my mind is blown.
Yeah. And that's really kind of what it is. Like, you can say this followed by this, followed by this. And if you build that in this way, this is one of the ways that you can do it. If you can't do it from within that single prescription by itself, which I think is really, really nice. One of the things I'm going to show you now is we have all these Adderall prescriptions. It's a bad example with the Adderall. Let's do it differently. I don't like to use the Adderall one. Let's do hydrochlorothiazide. So I'm going to get my hydrochlorothiazide, my 25 mg hydrochlorothiazide, and that's fine. We'll just accept it. Your patient's already on it. So this is the situation that sometimes comes up when ordering medications. And we're not going to talk about adding it to my favorites. We're going to talk about one of the things that we can do with this that I really kind of like. And it doesn't come up all the time, but when it comes up, it's a rather painful experience. And this is now something that you'll be really thankful So we can see here the hydrochlorothiazide. Let's just say that I went in and I made all the updates like I like to do, and I click accept. And then the patient says, oh, can you actually get me a 30-day supply for now and then send the rest of it to mail order? And you're like, oh man, no. Like what do I do now? I'm going to right click on this medication. And when I right click on the medication, there's something called create a copy. And when I copy that order, what it does is it takes that same order and copies it. So it takes whatever you just did and it copies it over to a new order. And in this case, one of the things I'm going to change here on the copy is I'm going to make it a 0 refill. This is going to be the stuff for right now. And actually, we'll just do a 30 days. So make everybody happier. There we go. 30 days, 0 refills. That's going to be fine. I'm going to go ahead and click accept. I'm not going to mess with the start date of the other one because it'll, you could, but we'll figure it out. So now what I have here is I have that same medication order for the patient. One's a 0 refill and one is an 11 refill. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this pharmacy button, because now you say, well, yeah, Patrick, but they're going to all send them to the EMC Prescription Pharmacy West. I'm going to click on that pharmacy button. And we can see here that I have a really good support staff, and they've actually updated Ramsey's pharmacy choices. And he's got 2 favorites here, the Pharmacy West and the mail order pharmacy. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I could select the mail order pharmacy. I don't want to have to order it and then click sign twice. There's a button here called send to multiple pharmacies on the bottom of that pharmacy selection screen. And when I click on that, I get something that's a lot like that diagnoses window when we associate the diagnoses. And here we can see the 0 refills I want to give to him now, but this 11 refills, I want to send that to the mail order. Go ahead and click accept. And now when I click sign, it's going to send both of those off, one of them to the mail order, one of them to the regular pharmacy with that exact copy, one with 0 refills, one with 11 refills. So you can kind of do it both with one sign. Saves you a sign at the minimum, but it also can be a nice convenient way to have that for a patient that you might get where you tend to be in that situation a lot. It might not happen as much. We tend to see it a lot for our snowbirds and stuff like that down south. But for when it does happen, this is a really nice thing. And that duplicate order is not only great for this, but it's also great potentially for that Adderall situation when you want to have 3 of the same prescription followed on by each other, so that we can get a 90-day supply rather than do 30-day supplies until our fingers bleed. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I have a couple other things I want to show you. All right.
Patrick, is there an easy way to tell when a medication was most recently prescribed? Because I have patients contact me all the time asking for prescriptions when I think I just wrote them, but I can't seem to locate.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer it from the refill request perspective. And I will, and this is an in-basket, a little preview for what we're going to talk about in basket. But one of the things that it depends on a little bit is what information you're getting. So there's the when was it prescribed and when was it filled. So there's a little bit of debate there and a little bit of debate of how they might have pulled it in. But if they have it here, we're in our in basket. We've pulled up that refill request. This could be a patient call. This could be a variety of different things. But if you're in your in basket, this is the easiest way when you get in that scenario. There's a little button here on your in basket. There's these buttons at the top that you might have never clicked on. But one of them that I really like is the patient info button because it shows previous encounters and upcoming visits, and I can click on them and jump into them. But another one is this meds and problems, which is really kind of just a view of that snapshot. So if you're in an encounter, this is kind of the same thing you can see in a snapshot. And depending on how yours is set up, when I click on that Lipitor, the view here of the Lipitor will show when it was last started. And if it was, who authorized it, things like that. So you can see the start date and the written date. So this will show you for this active medication when the last one was written. Now, the neat thing here, if you're also getting pharmacy fill information, it will actually show you when it was last filled. So you can even kind of get a little bit of that information too. But at a minimum, that shows you when it was last written. So if I ever get kind of those things, that's one of the ways you can see it. You can also see it in the medication record itself when you go to reorder it too. But I think when I think of it kind of in this situation, and being able to find it here is pretty easy. You can also see it here depending on what view you have, where it will show those last orders and who ordered it as well within that kind of requested prescription view.
Similarly, is there a way to see whether a medication has been deleted or stopped?
Stopped? Yes. So I don't know if I have a great way to show this, but we're going to try it. So one of the things that comes up is a very kind of difficult thing to show, and we'll use the Adderall example. I was just in a pediatric clinic about a month ago, and a provider actually brought this up to me as, hey, here's how I do this thing. And the question is often, like for ADHD medications, is kind of what's kind of been tried. What have we done? What's worked? What have been adjusted over time? Like what have the levels been? Like all that kind of different stuff that goes into it. And there are tools in Epic like Synopsys where you can kind of see some of that over time, but it's actually not always super easy depending on what Synopsys is built and kind of what the setup is, things like that. But one of the things that you can do with chart search, let's see if it'll find it via that, is, so I just typed in HCTZ or hydrochlorothiazide. This could be, ADHD, it could be Adderall, like depending on what, in the case of what we did is we looked it up by sort of why it was prescribed. And in that case, it was ADHD. And what then happens in chart search, one of the things that it does is it searches everything. You can kind of see all the different things here. But when you click on just the meds, it will actually just shrink it down to only show the meds, which is all I had in this case because I searched for it specifically. And then what it does is it gives you a chronological order of past prescriptions that might have been placed. So this is one way that if you kind of know what you're looking for, you can sort of see that span of medications and what has been ordered and what has been tried. And it's really kind of nice because you can then really just scroll back and see, okay, we were doing a 12.5, then we were doing a 25, then we dialed back down to 12.5 because Patrick lost weight, like whatever the case might be, you can kind of see in that order in a relatively easy and on-demand way, which I like. The other place you can see it, I don't like as much, but this is the other way where you can see that information. On that medications tab, one of the things that you can see here is it by default, it only shows current meds. If you uncheck that, it'll show all of those past meds too. So you can see all those sort of canceled prescriptions from many years ago. This view is okay, but I think because of sort of how, you know, it's displayed and the nature of what it is, I like the search view a little bit better than doing the current meds only, unchecking the current meds only, because it does show those cancellations in here. Go ahead.
If in this view, if you click on filter, and then you can choose the specific medication you were looking for, and then you don't have to look at like a million meds. You will only look at,
Yeah.
So
And
the medication on the left side bottom. Yeah, so you can, for example, if you just want the hydrochlorothiazide and you click on it, it shows all of the hydrochlorothiazide prescriptions.
yes.
And if they have been discontinued, it shows you when it was discontinued and who discontinued it.
Yep. And the other nice thing with this too is you can also do it by therapeutic class or pharm class too. So if you are looking for, you know, those anti-diabetic medications, all of them, regardless of if it was the metformin or something else, you can do that as well to see. The big thing is uncheck those current meds only. In the future, not to jump on a slightly different tangent, I think one of the ways that we're going to see people do things like this is what we call lifetime. And you might not have this. I'm in the encounters tab. It's an activity here. But lifetime, the design is supposed to be to be able to look at something more in a timeline view, a lot of different data kind of in a different view where you can kind of look at it over time. What I really like it for now is the medication part down here. So we can see here, for example, we want to, let's view a 5-year view here. We can see here on that, let's go even farther. Let's go lifetime. So here are those anti-diabetics, and the patient's had one, he's been on metformin, but one of the nice things you can see with the timeline is you can see where those changes might have occurred to that medication in those anti-diabetics. So it's another way you can kind of visualize it. I think there's a lot of stuff that's still a little bit complex when I review information on timeline or lifetime, sorry. But one of the things I really have liked it for is the view of the medications and being able to see kind of what does that look like over time and what has changed. I don't know if you do, I think if you click on chart review, it's kind of just a little button here. I think you probably have it because I think it's just kind of there by default, but I don't think, you know, you probably have never clicked on it.
Yes, we have it.
Yeah.
I've never clicked on it though.
Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, it's brand new. So yeah, like I think there's a lot, like it can be a little bit complex. It's nice to view kind of that 3-year horizon and see kind of different activities. I suppose I'm sure some people have really liked it for certain things, but what I've really found that's kind of that really kind of cool use case is looking at that medication over time, being able to see those anti-diabetics, seeing the list of medications, and then being able to scroll and see, you know, using the little scroll bar, what's been tried, you know, okay, here is the change. What did we do here? It was discontinued and reordered. Okay. You know, if there was a change of dose, you'd be able to see that in here as well. You can kind of see it. It shows you what the events were on here. So it's designed to try to view a lot of information in a little bit more of a condensed format. So yeah, something to think about. And then I briefly mentioned synopsis. That's another place where, for example, if I looked at my diabetic synopsis, these do have to be pre-built, which is why I don't like to rely on them because I don't always know that somebody pre-built the one I would want. But you have other things like you can see medications on here as well. So it's a similar timeline view, in this case, pulling out just those anti-diabetic meds. And you can kind of see the changes over time. And here's that reorder. But if you had other anti-diabetics, it would show them kind of stacked up on here as well. So there's kind of different ways you could potentially see sort of the treatment course that we've tried for a patient or things that we might have done. This one being somebody needed to build it ahead of time. Lifetime timeline, what do we call it? Lifetime being everything that's there. And then I like chart search because I can just do that on the fly, or filters in chart review, either way. Okay, I have a little bit more time. I want to show one more thing for sure, and then we can take a pause and see where we want to go. I'm back on the plan tab. in a visit. And this scenario is the patient that comes in and you want to reorder medications. And, you know, just like many patients now, there's multiple medications that they're on. So reordering can be a little bit labor intensive. I don't always love to do it. So when they say, hey, can you reorder everything? On this meds and orders tab, there is a column here that gives me a reorder button, which is great. I can click on reorder and it'll pop the window up if there's something that I have to change, or it'll put it in my shopping cart. But one of the things, and I showed this at a previous session, so some of you may already have this set up, right next to this kind of patient reported area up in here, there's just some blank white space, you know, no big deal. If I right click on it, right in that area, I get a choice to do multiple select. When I click on multiple select, it adds a column to my meds and orders section right out in front. This column has a checkbox in it. So now what I can do is I can just check off the medications that I might want to reorder. And then now there's a button, it's at the top or the bottom, that allows me to take an action on all of the things that I checked. In this case, reorder 6 orders. Queues them all up. Puts them down in my shopping cart, ready to go. Now the system will remember that I like the multiple select, so you don't have to keep adding that for each patient. It'll remember that I like that added, if you like it. Not everybody does, but I think for the most part, especially if you, any situation where you are refilling more than one medication, it saves you at least 1 click each time. For some situations, depending on your settings and how you do things, it might even be more than that. But multiple select is kind of a nice way to do it. Go ahead and get rid of all these. So just to repeat what that was, when you're in your meds and orders section, there's a little blank space next to, in my case, next to patient reported, but kind of up in this header here. And when I right click, I get a lot of the same things I can see under the wrench, but I do get a special option for multiple select. And you can see mine is checked yes, toggled on, but I can uncheck it if I want, it'll go away. But I like to have it, so I'm going to go multiple select yes. And I like to see it there. Now, one of the things that we're hopeful for, as we get more and more data from pharmacies, one of the sort of benefits of data needs to be that we get some value out of it. And one of the things that we're seeing groups, not everybody yet, but we're starting to get more and more fill information and compliance information for medication. So how often is Patrick taking his hydrochlorothiazide? And you can start to see that in the number of days based on, you know, are they dispensing it every 30 days? Are they dispensing it every 35 days? You know, is Patrick kind of missing every 6th day in there? How does it work? So you can actually start to get some of that adherence information. Not everybody has this yet. It's something that we're starting to see a little bit more of as organizations get more and more pharmacy data. But this is something to look out for in the future. But I do get the question a lot of what is that adherence column? And that's what it is. It can show you, you know, how well Patrick is doing taking his hydrochlorothiazide based on, you know, how many times over the course of the year is he getting those fills on time, which is kind of nice.
Patrick, there was another question in the chat. Is there a way to build a panel where you can see all asthma inhalers and be able to see what's covered by insurance?
Yes, thank you. So maybe is the answer. So let's do, look for that albuterol. So depending on what information you have, in this case, you can see I don't have information. So yours might look like this. When I type in that inhaler, when I just search for it, you would see potentially what is covered and the copay information in here in this window, depending on how your is set up and what data you have. But this is where it would have that information. So this is where it would be sort of dynamic if you had it available. But what you could do is if there were certain ones that you wanted to add, you could add them all into sort of a panel and sort of leave them unchecked and then choose from it. But in that window, once you sort of place that order, or once you sort of choose that panel, it's just the display name that you'd see. So you wouldn't have that same information as if you were trying to order it by default. So that is one of the kind of drawbacks of that. This is nice because I get that coverage and formulary information if we get the data for all of them. But if I was going to just place that, let's just pull up that other one, the ADHD panel. You can see here, I don't have as much information, or I wouldn't have it because there's multiple drugs within it. So I wouldn't be able to have that resolved. And when I click on it, now they're already in my shopping cart. So good question. Unfortunately, not a great way to see it for sure. All right, we have a few minutes here. Any additional questions or things that you want to see again, scenarios that you're thinking about? There was a question about problem list. So problem list is related. So I'll talk about that for a couple minutes here. Right now I have my problem list by priority. The wrenches are your friends, and wrenches allow you to change how things are grouped by class, priority, status, system, etc. Priority is my priority. Now, what I would want, and it doesn't do yet, but it's a good idea if you're thinking it, is if there are certain ones that I would always want them high priority when I added them, when I looked at it. In this case, it's a patient-specific priority list for me, though, but it is for me. So for those frequent flyers, I now have Ramsey's, hyperlipidemia, and hypertension as high priority, so those will always sort to the top for me. So you can adjust dynamically kind of what things show on the top per patient by doing that. But the value here is really primarily for those frequent flyers, because once you do it, you don't see the patient ever again. You kind of just wasted the clicks. But for those patients that you see on a regular basis, it's a nice way to be able to do that, to have your stuff always sort at the top, no matter what somebody else might have added or adjusted to that problem. Or sorry, if they removed it from the problem list, it would no longer be there. But if they added something else, or if they had a different priority, or if they like to see something at the top, it doesn't matter. It'll always move yours to the top there. And that will adjust that sort priority. So that's one way that I can differentiate. I can say, I'm mainly worried about these two. Here are either things that I've not prioritized if I haven't seen it yet, or if it's a new one for the patient, or something that maybe falls a little bit lower, like that gout as a medium priority. So there is some work that you can do here to manage that problem list. I would encourage you to hit that wrench and take a look at some of those other options, and potentially look at some of the column options that you have as well. I like to have this change diagnoses here listed. Change diagnoses is this little button right here. And what I really like about change diagnoses, if you are a problem-oriented charter, you have that hypertension, and maybe it's not a great example, but maybe the diabetes, if that diabetes changes slightly, or if you get that more specificity, or after you've added that diabetes to the list, you want to update it. So I can say, I'm going to update this diabetes mellitus. I'm going to say that it is with long-term insulin use, without complications, and everything else looks good. So what I've just done now is I've kept the problem list entry the same. But what I've done is I've changed that ICD-10 code in the background. So now when I add this as a visit diagnosis, I'm going to have that more specific example. So if you ever get in that situation where you have something on the problem list, and every time you go and you add it to that visit diagnoses, and you get that pop-up where you have to get a little bit more specific. Now, some of the stuff you have to if it's the first or subsequent type visit situation. But if it really is something that is core to that diagnosis, you can actually edit it right there with that little change diagnoses button to make it a little bit more specific, so that every time you add it for that patient, you don't have to do those same several clicks.
Is there an easy way? In multiple patients, there are many very similar diagnoses, and they just have very slightly different names. Is there a way to easily consolidate, like, when there's essential hypertension,
Yeah.
primary hypertension, like, I don't know if there's a way to do that.
Yeah,
either.
it's a great question. I wish there was. I think there's a couple things that we need to do smarter with problem lists, and one of them is that consolidation that invariably happens. What we really want right now, you can resolve or you can remove a problem, but in some cases, depending on problem-oriented charting, what people have done, you kind of want to combine them. You don't really want to send one away and say it's resolved. You want to just say these things are all together. So right now, what you can do is you can remove it or resolve it, delete or resolve, depending on what you want, and that will kind of clean it up. But it doesn't sort of combine those two things if somebody had problem-oriented charting under it. The other thing that I want to do is I want it to have a hierarchy where, maybe I have that, the obesity as sort of the primary thing. And then under it, we have some hypertension, sleep apnea, other things like that are going to be related. But really it's the obesity is sort of the main thing that we're managing and we're working on with Ramsey. Those are the two things, that hierarchical concept, and then the ability to sort of say, I'm going to mush these two things together, because not only is it similar sounding things, sometimes it's something that you thought it was this and it was really something else by the time the cardiologist got a hold of the patient. And I want to have all my stuff that I started, that problem-oriented charting, merged up into that original one. And the best thing you can really do is sort of edit yours so that it's this edit diagnoses button. By default, will pull up that existing diabetes, but I could change this to hypertension. And what that allows me to do is keep my problem-oriented charting that I started for that diabetic, but as it evolved to something different, I can change it there. So you can do a little bit of that. You just can't combine. So kind of stinks. I agree.
And what you're saying is that if you resolve it, you lose the charting that was done. So if another specialist did write some very intelligent comments under that diagnosis, you lose it if you resolve it.
Yeah, lose in different terms. It's not on the main view here. You can show past problems, which would show those resolved items.
I see.
So like it's still there, but I think to your point, it's not front and center. It's not sort of obvious if they had a really good overview note or they were writing assessment and plan notes. But yeah, I agree. It's some way to smartly combine those. And I don't know how smartly combine works. I think there's probably a lot to noodle through on how that would work, but I would like some way to sort of be able to say, hey, these two things are going to be combined together and somehow mash those assessment and plan notes together. But then I'm sure that we'll do that. And then the cardiologist will say, why'd you let them mash my notes there? Now I have to read all that stuff from the dermatologist. So it's an interesting problem. No pun intended. But I do think I want some more advanced features rather than just change. I want to sort of be able to say, no, these two things are really something that we should combine because, I don't know why Patrick started a second hypertension problem. Okay, so it's 6:28, 6:30. I did add control spacebar as the keyboard shortcut to jump to the search button. Right now it's in the upper right and it's over here, which is sort of annoying. I've started to use the one over here in the storyboard a little bit more. Eventually, I think we're probably going to just move to probably just this one, but we'll see. But I like to use control spacebar, and that just kind of wherever it's going to be, it'll pop it open, and then I can just use that to search. But I like chart search. The key is when you are searching in that patient's chart to know that there are those different options. So when I type in back pain, I can see that the all tab will show me sort of a chronological of everything. But often if you're just sort of looking for maybe meds I prescribed or labs that I've done or times I mentioned in the note, that's where you can see that. And when you hover over it, you get that little carve out of where it was mentioned to see, oh, it's just negative for back pain. So it's not relevant. Ramsey doesn't have a history of it, at least not a documented history. So, yeah. Well, all right. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here again. I know it's been a long day. It's been a long 2 years, a long Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday anyway. But I appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you all. I do have some additional questions that were slightly unrelated, but as I mentioned, I'll work on maybe writing up some answers here. But a couple of them we are going to cover in subsequent sessions. So hopefully we'll get to most of those during these sessions and hope to see everybody again. So thanks. I'm sure that Liz and others would appreciate any feedback to make these as effective as possible as we do these in the coming months.
Yeah, Patrick, that was fantastic again. Thank you. Our next session is Wednesday, March 14th in basket management. Thank you all for participating. Hope to see you next month. And Patrick, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
I'll be here.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
folks. Bye.